And welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. After meeting with European leaders, Zelensky moves to mend US-Ukraine ties, thanking Trump following a public clash in the Oval Office. France and the UK call for a one-month truce after the European summit. In the Middle East, Israel blocks humanitarian aid to Gaza as talks with Hamas stall. Phase 1 is extended amid mediators' outrage, accusing Israel of blatantly violating the ceasefire agreement. Stars gather and shine on Hollywood's biggest night in Los Angeles as the indie film Anora sweeps 5 Oscars. Adrian Brody takes Best Actor for The Brutalist and Mikey Madison takes Best Actress for her win in Anora. In Syria, a new committee is formed to draft a transitional constitutional declaration while the new Syrian government deploys forces in Damascus after deadly clashes in the capital. US President Donald Trump calls for an investigation into potential lumber import tariffs to boost domestic supply. This move could heighten global trade tensions. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent urges Canada to align with Mexico on US tariffs against Chinese goods. Let's take a look at this report.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has wrapped up a crucial diplomatic tour following a heated exchange with former President Donald Trump and Senator J.D. Vance in Washington. Describing himself as bruised but motivated, Zelensky quickly moved on to the UK, where he attended a summit with 18 world leaders. During his visit, he received warm welcomes, including an embrace from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and a meeting with King Charles. Zelensky used the opportunity to publicly praise the US for its support and highlighted European unity.
Тижнями буде дипломатія заради миру. І заради того, щоб всі ми були разом. Україна, вся Європа і обов'язково Америка. Звісно, ми усвідомлюємо важливість Америки. І ми вдячні за всю підтримку, яку ми отримали від Сполучених Штатів Америки.
He also reiterated the need for security guarantees for Ukraine in any future peace deal.
Тому, як підсумок цих днів, чітка підтримка Європи, більше єдності, ще більше готовності співпрацювати, всі єдині в головному, щоб мир був реальним, потрібні реальні гарантії безпеки. І це позиція всієї нашої Європи, усього континенту. Британія, Європейський Союз, Норвегія, Туреччина. Сьогодні ми скоординували наші позиції, буде багато зустрічей, багато спільної роботи. Найближчими днями, найближчими тижнями буде.
Before departing the UK, Zelensky confirmed his readiness to pursue a minerals deal with the US, signaling continued cooperation.
Незважаючи на те, що сталося раніше, незважаючи на це, ми конструктивні. Якщо ми домовилися, що вона буде підписана, з нашого боку, ми готові підписувати. Я, чесно кажучи, думаю, що і Сполучені Штати будуть готові. Напевно, потрібен час проаналізувати якісь речі. Я хотів просто, щоб почули позицію України.
Meanwhile, France and the UK are proposing a one-month truce between Russia and Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron clarified that the truce would focus on halting attacks on air, sea and energy infrastructure, but would not cover ongoing ground fighting. He acknowledged the challenges in verifying such a ceasefire along the extensive front line. Zelensky's message remains clear. Ukraine seeks strong security assurances as it navigates its path forward amid ongoing international diplomacy. Bureau Report, NewsX World.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from across North America. US President Donald Trump has responded to criticism over his increasing closeness to Russia on Ukraine. He posted on his Truth Social platform saying the United States should worry less about Russian President Vladimir Putin. He thinks they should spend more time worrying about migrant rape gangs, drug laws, murderers, and people from mental institutions entering the US so they don't end up like Europe. US Secretary Pete Hegseth has told reporters, saying he has ordered a pause on all the country's cyber operations against Russia. This includes offensive actions as well. He said to reporters that the order was part of an overall re-evaluation of US operations against Moscow. The duration or extent of the pause is unclear. This change comes as US President Donald Trump has been pushing for negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. Donald Trump will address a joint session of Congress on Tuesday, presenting his vision for the US and the world. The speech comes just 6 weeks after his inauguration. In the session, Trump is expected to highlight his executive orders from his first 43 days in office. He will also discuss his plans for the remaining 1,419 days of his presidency. This address follows the storming of the Capitol by his supporters after his 2020 election defeat. Top Washington officials suggested that Ukrainian President Zelensky may need to step down for a peace deal to be reached. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz told reporters that a leader capable of negotiating with both the US and Russia is needed to end the war. He warned that if Zelensky's motivations diverge from ending the conflict, it could pose a significant issue. US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a noted vaccine skeptic, voiced support for the measles jab. This comes after an outbreak of the disease spreads in the country's southwest. An unvaccinated child died in late February in the state of Texas in the first US fatality from the highly contagious disease in a decade. Kennedy, recently confirmed as health secretary, has previously made false claims about the MMR vaccine's safety and downplayed outbreaks as not unusual. An environmental activist was shot and killed in southern Mexico, marking the latest attack on an ecologist. 63-year-old Cristino Castero Perea was targeted by two gunmen on a motorcycle in Oaxaca late Friday. His death was confirmed by the Center for Human Rights and Advice to Indigenous Peoples. He had opposed a large development project along a Pacific Ocean beach since 2013. His killing highlights ongoing violence against environmental advocates in Mexico. US-based private space firm Firefly Aerospace has made history by becoming the first commercial company to achieve a fully successful soft landing on the moon. The Blue Ghost lander touched down smoothly on the lunar surface after orbiting for 2 weeks. This is a significant step in NASA's collaboration with private space companies, marking a major milestone in commercial space exploration. Here is more in this report.
Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost lander has successfully landed on the moon, making it the first private company to achieve a fully successful soft landing. The spacecraft touched down in the Mare Crisium region, a massive lunar basin visible from Earth, after a 2-week lunar orbit. Blue Ghost carried 10 scientific and technological payloads, including NASA instruments designed to study lunar dust, radiation, and surface materials. The mission is part of NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services program, aimed at advancing lunar research through private partnerships. Firefly plans to follow up with 2 additional Blue Ghost missions in 2026 and 2028, both of which are expected to deliver more scientific payloads and support NASA's long-term lunar objectives. Blue Ghost launched on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from Florida on January 15th. This milestone underscores the growing role of private companies in space exploration as NASA prepares for future manned missions to the moon. Bureau Report, NewsX World.
Now let's take a look at some news coming in from South America. In December, Argentina's Justice Ministry implemented 400 layoffs at its secretariat, affecting about 50% of the staff. Many workers, including those from the National Memory Archive, were left uncertain about their job status. The ministry claims the layoffs were part of a voluntary redundancy plan, citing overlapping roles. Human rights groups have urged Argentina to ensure adequate support for amidst the cuts. 50 years ago, the Kuna people of Panama opened their lives to a documentary, only to see it disappear when the reels were seized by a bank. For decades, the community searched until decaying footage was found in Panama's Ministry of Culture and a hidden copy surfaced in Paris. Now the Kuna people reclaim their story, with elders passing down their history to a new generation. Yamandu Orsi, Uruguay's new president, took office on Saturday, marking the return of the centre-left broad front after a 5-year gap under conservative leader Luis Lacalle. He promises to address rising inequality and surging crime while strengthening the social safety net and revitalising the country's economy. His victory came after public frustration with Lacalpe's government. Guyana's President Ifrane Ali condemned a Venezuelan naval vessel's incursion into disputed waters, home to ExxonMobil's offshore oil fields. Ali called it a grave concern and reaffirmed Guyana's territorial integrity, alerting international allies. Venezuela rejected the claims, with Vice President Delcy Rodriguez calling for ExxonMobil's operations illegal. The incident intensifies the long-standing dispute over the Essequibo region. Brazil's Oscar-nominated actress Fernanda Torres has become this year's Carnival Muse, as the Oscars coincide with the country's biggest celebrations. Torres, nominated for her role in I'm Still Here, has sparked nationwide excitement, with celebrations and tributes throughout Brazil. Revelers are sporting costumes inspired by her, and nomination has overshadowed traditional carnival festivities. The 97th Academy Awards took place at the Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles on March the 2nd. All eyes were on Jack Audard's audacious musical Emilia Perez, as it was leading with 13 nominations. But it was the night for Sean Baker's Anora. The film took home 5 Oscars, including Best Actress, Best Director, Best Film, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Film Editing. Here is a detailed report.
Mikey Madison won Best Actress for Anora, while Adrian Brody was awarded Best Actor for The Brutalist. Best Supporting Actress was taken home by Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez. The list goes on, with Best Supporting Actor, Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain, and Best Director was awarded to Sean Baker for Anora. Meanwhile, I'm Still Here secured the Best International Feature. The most nominated film of the night was Netflix's crime musical Emilia Perez, which had 13 nods, the most ever for a film not in the English language. The Best Original Song was taken home by El Mal for Emilia Perez. Meanwhile, the Susan Lucci of the film world, Warren lost the Oscar Sunday night after her 16th Best Original Song nomination. It was Warren's 8th consecutive nomination in the category. Ahead of this, the Oscars have faced criticism for skipping film clips in the supporting acting categories. The night started with a stunning, Broadway-esque opening, as Ariana Grande has delivered a powerful rendition of Over the Rainbow. Meanwhile, her co-star Cynthia Erivo has captivated the audience with her version of Home from the Wiz. The two have then come together for a duet of their film's theme song, Defying Gravity. The highlight of the event was Mikey Madison's winning speech, wherein she thanked her family.
To my incredible family, my mom and my dad and my sister and my little brother and my twin brother, Miles, thank you for being my best friend, not that you have a choice.
The night wrapped up with a tribute to Barbara Broccoli, and Michael G. Wilson gave a poignant farewell to the iconic James Bond legacy. Bureau Report, NewsX World.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from across Europe. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has rejected calls to cancel President Trump's state visit to Britain. This came ahead of a recent disagreement between Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky in Washington. Starmer has criticized politicians for trying to escalate tensions with Washington, especially when Europe faces a moment of real fragility. Meanwhile, Zelensky has met with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to discuss a joint plan for ending the war. Sources have indicated that parties in Germany have considered establishing 2 special funds potentially worth hundreds of billions of euros. One fund has been planned for defence, a second for infrastructure. Economists have estimated that around 400 billion euros are needed for the defence fund. Moreover, a meeting between Ukrainian President Zelensky and US President Donald Trump has increased the urgency in Berlin to act faster on spending for Germany's defense and Ukraine. Polish cybersecurity services have detected unauthorized access to the Polish Space Agency's IT infrastructure. The Minister for Digitalization, Gałkowski Warsaw, has announced that the systems under attack were secured. Meanwhile, the agency has confirmed the cybersecurity incident and disconnected its network from the internet to secure data. Pope Francis has been unable to deliver his traditional Angelus prayer in person for a third week in a row. The 88-year-old makes his address from a window of the official Vatican apartment. The medical team confirmed he is stable and no longer needs the non-invasive mechanical ventilation. He is only high-flow oxygen therapy. The Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni emphasised that Italy and the UK can build bridges between Europe and the United States. This came ahead of a recent fiery meeting between Trump and Zelensky. She highlighted the importance of avoiding the risk of the West and splitting, and considered that the UK and Italy can prove to play a significant role in mending the ties. The number of asylum applications registered across the European Union, Norway and Switzerland have decreased by 11% in 2024, but remained above the 1 million mark for a second consecutive year. The report released by the European Union Agency on Asylum on Monday morning shows that almost half of the 1 million applicants were submitted by citizenships with a chance of being denied. Syria's interim president has announced the formation of a 7-member committee. It is tasked with drafting a constitutional declaration to guide the country's transition after the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad. Meanwhile, Syrian security forces were deployed in a majority Druze town near Damascus after a gunfight between government officers and local armed men left 1 dead and several injured.
Syria's interim president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, has announced the formation of a 7-member committee to draft a constitutional declaration for Syria's transition after the overthrow of longtime ruler Bashar al-Assad. The new government is now focusing on rebuilding Syria and its institutions. The committee of experts, including 2 women, stated that it will submit its proposals to the president, though no specific timeline has been provided. The Assad-era constitution has already been repealed under the new leadership, and Ahmed al-Sharaa has indicated rewriting it could take up to 3 years. During this period, Syrian security forces were also deployed in Jaramana, a majority Druze town on the outskirts of Damascus. This came 2 days after a gunfight between government officers and armed men from a local neighborhood left 1 person dead and 9 others wounded. According to reports, the person killed was a security officer. Druze spiritual leaders blamed the killing on an undisciplined mob that does not belong to their customs.
اللي صارت عبارة عن شوية عكرة أخوة ببعضهم وأهل ببعضهم والحمد لله مضت على خير وما في شيء. نحن جزء من سوريا، نحن من قلب سوريا ونحن واجبنا حماية سوريا والدفاع عنها.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has warned Syria's new leaders not to harm the Druze. He said that if the regime harms the Druze, it will suffer the consequences. Bureau Report, NewsX World.
Now let's take a look at some news updates coming in from across the Indo-Pacific. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked US President Donald Trump on Sunday for sending munitions. They had previously been held up by the Biden administration. Netanyahu stated that these tools will assist Israel in finishing the job against Iran's terror axes. He also said in a video statement in English that Donald Trump is the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. According to reports, China is likely to target American agricultural exports as it prepares countermeasures against US import tariffs that will take effect on March the 4th. The new tariffs include an additional 10% duty on Chinese goods due to fentanyl-related concerns. China is considering both tariff and non-tariff measures, with products such as soybeans, beef, and pork potentially on the list. The head of Myanmar's military government, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, arrived in Russia on Monday for an official visit. He is set to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin and other high-ranking officials to discuss bilateral ties. This marks Min Aung Hlaing's fourth visit to Russia since seizing power. Myanmar and Russia have also previously conducted joint military drills and signed a nuclear development pact. Manila's ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Romualdez, confirmed on Monday that the United States and the Philippines have reaffirmed their alliance. He asserted the importance of their partnership and shared interest in the Indo-Pacific region. He also stated that all countries need to be ready to beef up their own defense and ensure their economic security. Days after North Korea's recent test launch of cruise missiles, a US aircraft carrier, the USS Carl Vinson, arrived in South Korea on Sunday as a show of force. This is the first aircraft carrier to travel to South Korea since June. The deployment aims to display a strong US-South Korea military alliance and improve operations between the two nations' forces. In a surprising development, a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin is now pushing for the revival of the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline project with the backing of US investors. The plan signals a shift in geopolitics with potential impacts on energy supplies to Europe. Here is more in this report.
A former East German Stasi officer, Matthias Warnig, is at the center of this initiative. He was once a key figure running Nord Stream's parent company under the control of Gazprom, Russia's state-owned gas giant. Now, Warnig is reaching out to US investors to restart the pipeline, a move that was once unthinkable via an American foreign policy towards Russia. The back-channel efforts, including outreach through business channels, aim to foster economic ties while working towards a resolution in the ongoing war in Ukraine. The talks surrounding the Nord Stream 2 deal also involve a US-led investor who are reportedly developing a post-sanctions plan with Gazprom. Heavily, such a deal is far from straightforward. It would require lifting sanctions on Russia, a resumption of gas sales and a green light from Gazprom to allow gas flows.
Der Wegfall der russischen Gaslieferungen Nord Stream 1 hat ungefähr die Hälfte des deutschen Gasverbrauchs betroffen. 55 Milliarden Kubikmeter Gas waren als Kapazität dort möglich und sind auch teilweise genutzt worden. Das ist kompensiert worden durch enorme Sparanstrengungen der deutschen Verbraucherinnen und Verbraucher und der deutschen Industrie auch mit.
In the US, the Trump administration, which had previously criticized the Nord Stream 2 project, is now reportedly considering the pipeline as a strategic asset in peace negotiations with Russia. But significant challenges, such as European response to an internal US policy changes, remain. As the situation unfolds, the Nord Stream 2 deal serves as a powerful symbol of how geopolitics, energy, and international alliances continue to shape the future of global power dynamics. Bureau Report, NewsX World.
Let's now take a look at some news updates from across the world of business. Chinese bubble tea giant Mixu Ice Cream and Tea had its shares soar 40% on its Hong Kong Stock Exchange listing, raising $444 million. With more than 45,000 stores globally, Mixu beats McDonald's and Starbucks in number of stores, running mostly through franchises. Its low-cost strategy has fueled explosive growth despite economic woes in China. China is planning retaliatory moves against new tariffs imposed by the US, most likely to hit American agricultural exports, as per reports by Global Times. This action has escalated trade tensions following Trump's imposition of a 10% tariff increase. Being the biggest customer of US farm goods, tariffs imposed on major such items as soybeans and meat could have substantial effects on US farmers and trade. Australia's Star Entertainment is facing a trading suspension as it battles to raise rescue funding. The casino group has postponed its first half results, citing financial instability and survival issues. Years of regulatory attention and legal issues have compounded its woes. US-based Oaktree Capital has offered refinancing a $650 million of its debt. In January, Star disclosed it had just $79 million in cash reserves. South African food producer RCL Foods, whose brands include Selati Sugar and Sun-Baked Bread, posted a 38.8% increase in half-year profits, with solid performances across groceries, bakery, and sugar. Headline earnings per share improved to 109.4 cents, with revenue up 5.4% to 13.6 billion rand. Earning before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, EBITDA improved 25.1 to 1.5 billion rand thanks to cost efficiencies and stable power supply. The company paid a 20% dividend after missing the last period. Low-cost carrier Norwegian has signed a deal to buy 10 Boeing 737-800 aircraft from its leased fleet in a bid to save cost and gain fleet flexibility. The deal was initially financed by cash balances and is due to close in the first quarter, with long-term financing being considered. The airline expects a one-off gain of 570 million Norwegian crowns and cost savings of 200 million crowns per annum, net of financing expenses. And that is all we have time for. We will be back with more international news updates.